Welcome to A2Council Update, a recap of the Ann Arbor City Council meeting on February 6, 2023. My name is Elizabeth Nelson, and I served on Ann Arbor City Council from 2018 to 2022. I understand the inner workings of our local government, and I believe that you should too. This is the voting chart for the council meeting on February 6, 2023. 2 council members were absent this week, Aisha Ghazi Edwin from Ward 3 and Chris Watson from Ward 2. All items were approved unanimously. You can find this voting chart and more information about this meeting at A2Council.com. This week, City Council considered a very short agenda that included 4 public hearings, 2 related to a redevelopment at 530 North Division. After introductory remarks and public comment, Council considered agenda items for approximately 30 minutes. 6 people signed up in advance to offer public comments. 2 people spoke on topics that were part of the agenda. Former council member Kathy Griswold commented on pedestrian safety as well as the resolution in DC 1 regarding improvements to the East Medical Center Drive Bridge.
While we're working on tweaking this bridge one more time, we have hundreds of streetlights that are out and hundreds, if not thousands, of crosswalks without optimal lighting.
This week's agenda included a communication from the city administrator reporting on the results of a survey verifying compliance with the city's prevailing wage ordinance. In 2008, the City of Ann Arbor adopted a prevailing wage ordinance that explains that the city will not enter into contracts unless all craftsmen, mechanics, and laborers employed on site receive the prevailing wage for the corresponding classes of craftsmen, mechanics, and laborers. In 2022, the city conducted a survey to verify compliance with this ordinance. As reported by the city administrator, staff conducted wage rate interviews, asking employees their hourly wage and what work they were performing. Councilmember Eyer explained the results of the survey in this way.
And as this memo notes, in this past construction season, 24 violations were found. So we went from 1 violation in 5 years using the payroll records to 24 violations in 1 season, which is really significant.
City staff reported that of the 24 violations, most were quickly resolved or were minor oversights that were resolved quickly. City staff reported that there remain 7 unresolved violations, 4 for missing paperwork and 3 for underpaid employees. Councilmember Eyer proposed specific action.
Do we levy fines? Do we consider disbarment from future bidding? Given the scope of the violations that were uncovered this year, I think we need to think about the consequences.
For more about how city contracting policy has changed recently and Councilmember Eyer's leadership in reducing competition for city contracts while advertising her own consulting business on behalf of labor unions, follow the links in the video description below. The consent agenda included 6 items and $4.4 million in spending. Nothing was pulled for discussion, and all items were approved unanimously. No one spoke during the public hearing for amendments to the city ordinance regulating stormwater management. After staff explanation and 5 minutes of discussion, City Council approved the changes unanimously. Council also unanimously approved summary of the ordinance to meet legal requirements for publication. 1 person spoke during the public hearing for the historic district at 1201 Gardner, the former home of Robert and Irma Hayden. He introduced himself as the son-in-law of the Haydens, married to their only daughter. He spoke about Mr. Hayden.
He was one of the best poets in the world, and still is. And during the African-American Black Power movement, the writers dated themselves. That's what I was saying, don't feed. All hate passes. Love is the only thing that endures. And that's a fact. That's a religious and scientific fact. And the rest of it just fades. And that's what happens with his writing. All those writers faded. And his writing endured.
The historic district was approved unanimously. 5 people spoke during 2 public hearings related to 530 North Division. 1 hearing for the rezoning and another hearing for the site plan. An existing structure will be demolished in order to build a larger structure with reduced setbacks.
I'm opposed and protest the PUD. I see the 530 proposal as greed camouflaged by green.
Over the past few years, Doug Selby has met with the Executive Committee of the Old Fourth Ward Association many times to outline his plans, which ultimately culminated in a PUD. This is housing, and we need housing in our neighborhood, and we think that this is a good project, and we support it.
Doug has taken all the right steps. He has met with us numerous times, received our feedback, incorporated that feedback, gone to the Historic Commission, got approval for that.
The site plan indicates that this will be one of the most sustainable buildings in the country, but not one of the most expensive.
Developer Doug Selby spoke on behalf of the project.
We designed it to fit into the streetscape and scale, and make a nice piece of architecture. I appreciate the strong support of the Old Fourth Ward Association, and I appreciate the ideas that they came up with to make it better.
The rezoning was introduced by Councilmember Dish.
The proposed project will contain 4 dwelling units, but will provide 24 bedrooms. So this is a densification project, achieves greater density on an existing lot. We are asked at this moment to vote only on the rezoning to PUD, which has been requested in order to modify building setbacks, conflicting land use buffers, driveway width, landscaping, and open space requirements.
After that introduction, the rezoning was approved unanimously without any further discussion. The site plan for 530 North Division was also approved unanimously. In Agenda Item C1, Council considered a rezoning of 67.6 acres at Pontiac Trail and Duverin for a new development called The Village. This development will result in 164 owner-occupied townhomes and 320 stacked apartments, with plans to acquire an additional 11.6 acres for future expansion. The project requires City Council approval for rezoning before it can move forward. Earlier in the evening, public commenter Ken Garber expressed concerns about C1.
Ann Arbor needs the housing, and Robertson Brothers is a reputable builder. But this is a plan for 1993, not 2023.
He raised concerns about the planned use of gas in 320 apartment units in the village and quoted directly from the A2 plan.
All new residential and commercial buildings are designed and built to operate without the use of natural gas, end quote. And Strategy 3, Action 2, quote, all new construction from 2022 to 2030 and beyond is built to net zero energy standards, which includes no natural gas consumption, end quote. Our Office of Sustainability and Innovations reviewed the village last July and wrote this, quote, the use of fossil fuels in any capacity goes against the goals of A2, end quote. The affordability versus sustainability narrative is a false one. The operating cost advantage for gas over high-efficiency heat pumps is gone, at least for now. Tighter buildings with rooftop solar would ensure affordability. Thank you.
Council responded to these concerns.
The apartment rentals will be heated and cooled with gas. And despite that, they will be outfitted with energy-efficient electric appliances, which is a good thing, and the furnaces will be sized with conversion to electric, which is not as good as having them start out with electric. Yes, that's right. But we have no, yes. We would be missing out on housing, a significant amount of housing, and we would be missing out on the reclaiming of a landfill site.
But I also think it's important to look at this through the lens of what it means to rezone. And in my opinion, rezoning isn't, unless we're talking about a PUD, it's not our opportunity to it's not permission to try to get everything that we desire out of a project.
City Council unanimously approved the rezoning at first reading. At a future meeting and after a public hearing, it will be voted on for final approval. In Agenda Item C2, Council considered an amendment to expand the city's non-discrimination ordinance in order to prohibit discrimination based on use of a government-issued ID card. After introduction, C2 was approved unanimously at first reading. At a future meeting, there will be a public hearing and another vote for final approval. The head of Ann Arbor's Housing Commission, Jennifer Hall, explained proposed amendments to a city ordinance for affordable housing tax exemptions.
The intent is to provide an incentive to have some of the lower rents set aside for lower income households.
After staff explanation, the ordinance change was approved unanimously at first reading. It will return to council at a future meeting for a public hearing and final approval. In Agenda Item DC1, Council considered a resolution for collaboration and planning around rehabilitation of the East Medical Center Drive Bridge. Without discussion, Council unanimously voted to postpone DC1 to the February 21st meeting. For more information about the East Medical Center Drive Bridge, follow the link in the video description below. A liquor license and an updated list of businesses eligible for inclusion in the Main Street Social District were approved unanimously without discussion. Finally, City Council unanimously approved recognition of Temple Beth Emeth as a nonprofit eligible for a charitable gaming license through the state of Michigan, so they may hold a silent auction next month. Council discussion of the agenda ended around 8:40 p.m. Council then met in closed session for almost an hour to review a privileged and confidential legal memo sent to City Council on February 3rd. The meeting officially adjourned at 9:36 p.m. without any additional public comment. For more details about this meeting, visit A2Council.com. Like and subscribe if you want to be alerted to more updates like this one.